Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so we'll start this council matters meeting, and I can see we've kept up a long tradition of these internal meetings of not being very popular with members of the public. The purpose of this committee is to give advice and direction on internal council matters, such as HR, communications, finance, and, as you'll see, how our own lands are managed. We should always be asking the question about how efficient and effective we are and how can we improve. So there are 8 items on tonight's agenda, stretching from management of Rodden Meadow to the year-end balances and the use of this building. So if you have any comments on any items on the agenda as members of the public, then please wait for that topic to come up and I'll give you an opportunity to speak at that point. But first, the boring bits. Any apologies for absence? Hello.
So Jean Bolton, Pippa Goldfinger, Sheila Gore and Tim O'Connor.
So with those 4 missing, I suspect we'll probably be finished by 8 o'clock. Any declarations of interest from councillors? No? Let's go to the minutes now. Any questions or updates on the minutes? Nothing? Okay. I think I'm supposed to sign at this point. Any questions and comments from the public at this point? No. All right. Let's move on. Maybe not past 7, actually, not 8 o'clock. The item 3 on the agenda is a look ahead at the programme for council matters into the future. What I've done there is prepared an annual programme for this committee so that you can see far in advance. There are 5 meetings in the next 12 months. So there'll be a standard list of items on things like expenditure and staffing matters. There'll be a look in more detail at least on one part of our estate, and in tonight's meeting we're looking at Rodden Meadow and North Parade, and you can see the future programme in the report. And we'll also look at one of 4 themes in future meetings. So on the 6th of September we'll look at communications in more detail, on the 1st of November staffing, on the 21st of February finance, and then the future for town councils on the 9th of May. So that's just to give people an indication of the topics that we're likely to cover. I suspect that there'll be other issues and matters which arise over the next 12 months. So, any comments on that annual programme? Okay. I'll take you on to agenda item 4, which is a discussion on the management plans for Rodden Meadow, Millennium Green and North Parade. And I think Chris is going to lead on this one.
Right, just check this one. Oh, perfect.
No,
okay.
Did we need to vote on my recommendation or not?
Is there other recommendations? All right, you wrote them.
I shall sit back down.
I wrote them so long ago. Oh, I see, yeah, quite right, yes. I wasn't advised correctly by the people on my left. That's my excuse. So there's one recommendation. All those in for?
Somebody needs to, do we need to propose it and second it?
Oh, yeah, go on then.
We're doing this now.
Probably not, really. Who wants to propose it? Okay. Okay, we got that. So it's Toby proposed it and Colin seconded. All those for? Any against? No. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, agenda item 4.
Okay, so as Mel suggested, we're going to go through. We're going to be reviewing management plans for how we look after the parks and green spaces that we as the Town Council directly look after. And we're doing that across 5 meetings over the next year. And tonight we're starting with Rodden Meadow and North Parade. What you should find, hopefully, on tables or that you've got sight of are 4 different plans You'll have 2 written plans, one for North Parade and one for Rodden Meadow. And then there's 2 visual plans for Rodden Meadow, which look similar, but are slightly different. One's subtitled Current Management, and one is subtitled Next Steps and Ideas. And if people have them handy, I will be making some references to them.
Has everybody got that? Yes, okay.
Okay, lovely. So we're starting with a look at Rodden Meadow. Okay, so the written plan that you've got for Rodden Meadow is in a new format for us. What we are conveying in that plan is how we look after the site, what you will find there, what we value the site for, and also the typology of the site, which is a nod to the green infrastructure work that we're currently doing as well. That format of plan will be what appears when we look at all the different spaces over the course of the meetings. So they'll be readily identifiable as Frome Town Council spaces, and those are the management plans that you will see. The written plan for Rodden Meadow corresponds to the visual plans that you've got. So we'll do a quick summary of how we manage the site currently. So Rodden Meadow is managed with meadow grass and wildflowers, funnily enough, mown footpaths, and over the last couple of years, increasingly, we've been added glimpses of the river, places to sit, 1 or 2 events each year, including things like Mayhem in the Meadow, willow structures, and natural play as well. So the current management plan is as this appears. This has been in place for about the last 3 years now, and this is what we've been working on over that period, and especially since the Rangers came into place in the Town Council. So as I said, most of the footpaths through the meadow are mown in. The rest of the grass is cut on a meadow basis, which means an early cut around about April, and then you get a late cut in August, September, to prioritise different wildflower types. So an example of the willow structures and natural play that we have in the site. We've also been working on riverbank improvements, restoration of the riverbanks through natural methods, improvements in channel as well, and also in one location, semi-managed, semi-formal access to the river. So if you're looking at the current management visual plan of the site, what you'll also notice is 2 areas identified, one in red, one in orange. The one in red is Millennium Green. The one in orange is land to the north of Rodden Meadow. The reason that these 2 areas have been highlighted on this map is that we are expecting and negotiating to have both of these come across to the Town Council. We will therefore be in a position to manage these in a similar fashion to Rodden Meadow. As it happens, we're already supporting the trust who run Millennium Green with their current management. So we've been restoring the site, clearing areas, again, creating glimpses through to Rodden Meadow, places to sit. It's also the proving ground for the Critchhill Rangers scheme, where our rangers work directly with pupils from Critchhill School in teaching them how to take on outdoor skills, look after public open spaces. We've also been doing work clearing and improving the footpaths through the site. So, before we go on to next steps and any other ideas, does anyone have any queries, any comments at all about the current management of Rodden Meadow and Millennium Green?
What's a berm?
So, it's a structure that juts out into a river. The berms that we've got in Rodden Meadow along the river are made of willow, so they're natural berms. What they do is deflect the river channel, creating a bit more variety in the river itself, which tends to be quite good for fish, as Gary will attest.
Thank you.
Is there any issue with dog management at the moment?
So no, for the most part, Rodden Meadow, I'm certain, is a very popular spot with dog walkers. Whenever I tend to go through there, there's lots of dog walkers in there. But of all our sites, it tends to be the one where dog fouling is the least problem. and we haven't had any reports in the last 12 to 18 months of misbehaving dogs. So generally, I think the town is managing itself in this particular location.
It's really massively improved over the last 6 months down there, massively. So yeah, it's good.
The thing about Rotten Meadow and Millennium Green is that they're almost hidden from a lot of the town. And I think several of us know people who've lived here for some years who don't even know they exist. So even in the way we manage it now, I think we probably underplay it. So a little bit more signage and publicity about both of these areas would be really helpful, I think.
No, one of the things actually that we've done recently, so at this year's Mayhem in the Meadow, we had an Explore More fact sheet, which was to encourage families and children to explore more of Rodden Meadow. But yes, certainly some wayfinding and some signage will be on one of the slides coming up, actually.
Well, I can talk now because I thought you said, I may have thought you wrong, that Millennium Green doesn't belong to us.
Millennium Green is looked after by the Millennium Green Trust. The land is owned by Mendip District Council, and there is a long lease to the trust. The trust have approached the town council and said, you're helping us look after this space anyway. Can we just flip that relationship round where you're the responsible authority and we support you in the same fashion that a friends group will often support a town council? I think that's partly because the members of the trust are dwindling in number and enthusiasm. So it seemed a sensible step for us to do that and to attach it to Rodden Meadow at the same time.
For those people who don't know, Des is district council as well, Mendip. We'll probably need some assistance in levering the ownership out of Mendip because they've already asked us for a business plan.
So yes,
why we should take it over.
the formal process for us to take any space from the district council across to the town council is an application to the CAMG committee, Community Assets and Management Group. That is something that we're preparing at the minute, and in fact it's something that our public consultation this summer will start to inform. We'll be asking people how they'd like us to look after Millennium Green specifically, and then we can say these are the things that we'll be doing. Okay, perfect. So, anecdotally, the rangers, when they're out, Rodden Meadow is probably the site that they get the most praise and plaudits from people in terms of how they're looking after it. And I think a lot of that stems not only from how it looks, but actually how it feels as well. And on that basis, what we're looking to do is kind of reaffirm the management plan, actually. There's an evolution being suggested where we create more glimpses through the meadow. We improve certain aspects of the site. For example, in the photo there's an opportunity. Clearly, people are making access to the river already. What we can do is accent that and perhaps make it more interesting, a little bit safer. We could add something like a dipping platform. We've got ambitions to repair and improve the steps in Millennium Green, including a handrail. Sorry, actually, just to confirm, we're on the next steps and ideas visual plan for Rodden Meadow as well now. As I said, most of what we're suggesting is an evolution of what we're doing already. We'd like to introduce some better signage on the site. There's a particularly bad design choice down there that doesn't really sit with the natural environment in any way whatsoever. Potential for more willow down there. Again, potentially an entrance arch to both Millennium Green and Rodden Meadow would really tie the two sites together and make clear that you're in an area that's looked after in the same way. Last, but certainly not least, the two ideas that aren't on the current management plan, but are things that we'd like to discuss with the public and will be doing over public consultation this summer. One is an opportunity to add some picnic and play to the end of Rodden Meadow nearest the town. So as you come under the railway bridge and you go into the meadow, there's almost an annex to the site, which is got a slightly different feel, isn't quite so meadow-like, for want of a better term. That could be an opportunity to add some play. In addition to that, there's organisations looking at access and inclusion around the town, and one thought, and again something for us to discuss, could be a different surface path that runs through the meadow, which would provide slightly more inclusive access throughout the year for people. So again, the discussion element was any questions or thoughts on the evolution of what we're doing, but also those two ideas in particular, and any other ideas.
The surface path would be great, but people won't be able to get to the meadow because the road along Willow Vale is so dangerous that they'll never get to the accessible path by the public access.
Yeah, I mean, is a gravel path, which presumably is what is being proposed, is that significantly better in terms of access for people with accessibility issues than grass?
So I think if the idea proves popular over the consultation we do this summer, it's something that we will obviously have a chat with Fair Frome and the organisations who are looking at access around Frome on. Because yes, you're absolutely right. There's tiers of how much better a different surface would be. There's obviously an aesthetic that we'd have to get right if we looked at doing this. So at this stage, it's down as an idea, and it's something that we'll consult on and come back. If it proves popular, we'll add it to the management plan,
okay,
in the same way that we'd add the play potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of some sort of play and picnic and more of a structured space at the town end is a positive one. That'd be good.
Yeah, that'd be excellent.
Just a couple of points from me. On the main path, the tarmac path that goes through, it would be great to have some of the lights that we put in elsewhere, the ones that are inset into the surface, because it's very dark down there, and I think some of the overhanging branches need clearing out anyway. And also, just further down, there are areas as you're going away from the town on the tarmac path, which I think are owned, they're kind of the end of gardens owned by people in Rodden Road, which are not used. One or two of them are, but the rest aren't. It would be great if we could actually say to those people, do you mind if we start cutting your areas? Because it would really open up the space then. And as you go even further onto the next railway bridge, there's land that nobody really owns that I guess we should just somehow or other incorporate and look after, because it seems to me to be just left to look after itself, really. So just some comments on that.
No, and one of the things that we'd like to do over the consultation that we'll be doing is talking directly, obviously, to neighbouring properties. It would be lovely to know who all our neighbours are along there, and hopefully that might iron out some of those land ownership quirks and queries, at which point we'd be in a position to do those things.
Great.
How are we resourced for particularly the picnic and play? Is that something we could achieve this year?
So the Section 106 money that was attached to the Garston Road development has been earmarked for play improvements across various sites. We included a number of sites to give us the flexibility. As I said, with Rodden Meadow, play both feels like a natural fit, but at the same time, it could prove unpopular with some people. It has a meadow feel to it. However, if it's a popular idea, we can progress that in tandem with other 106 projects, which would mean potentially we'd be looking at for next summer, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I thought we might. Were we going to do North Parade as well?
Oh, sorry. Is there no? Yes, we don't have any slides for that.
The recommendations.
So sorry. The next step for Rodden Meadow, we brought that along for discussion tonight. What we will be intending to do is consultation in Rodden Meadow and direct to doors over the summer period. We will bring back an updated version of the written plan and an updated visual plan for approval and adoption at a later council matters meeting. One step ahead of that is a plan for North Parade, which is for adoption tonight. again, similarly, actually, what's written down in the plan is largely what we're doing at North Parade. What we haven't had in the past, actually, is it written down in this fashion. So the format is very similar to that of the written plan for Rodden Meadow. A brief introduction to the site, a description of what it is, what you'll find there, and our next steps, which for North Parade include some tree trails, more bulbs, bug hotels. We're hoping and planning to add some festive lights down down North Parade as well, and continuing woodland management. Again, there's a technical summary in the corner of the sheet, which identifies it as woodland, semi-natural woodland, and that we manage North Parade for its landscape and for its woodland habitat. So, again, any queries or comments at all?
Yeah, I've had several people recently say how nice it is that it's now a flower bed rather than that they use to grow food, just because they really appreciate the flowers.
So yes, one of the changes we've made back in the last couple of years is that the main planter on the way halfway down the hill is currently planted in conjunction with Frome Selwood Horticultural Society. Again, actually, Critchhill Rangers do an awful lot of work over at North Parade too, and we're involved in planting it this year. We will continue to plant that as a formal bed, and that is it's an introduction to the town, and it's an important route in and out, and that's one of the reasons that we've done. Okay. Thank you.
Chris, I think that the improvements that have been made to the green areas in town are absolutely crucial to the way that people feel, a lot of people feel about living in town. And I think it's one of the really interesting and important ways that people can actually get involved in the life of the town. And I'm really pleased to see the wildlife survey that you've added on to the plan, because I think it would be really engaging for a lot of people who could just kind of casually participate in something like that. And it's always great to see something that you wouldn't expect to see in the middle of a town, and to actually feel like you're contributing to looking after that wildlife. I think it's great.
Perfect. And what we're looking to do with wildlife surveys, not only at North Parade, Rodden Meadow, but it's a theme we'll revisit when we look at all the other spaces, is actually that they're a really interesting and engaging way of getting people involved at different levels. So there will be technical, very scientific, quadratic surveys of lots of sites, because it's important to know exactly what we've got. But actually, for other people, perhaps people who are more casually interested, or younger people, families, what we'll also be doing is kind of 10-minute walk rounds, so people can find out what is on their doorstep, but at a slightly higher, easier to access level. So, yes, I'm pleased that you like them.
It's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. There are 5 recommendations. Do you want to take them all at once? Okay, anybody propose them? And a second there? Colin, all those in favour? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we now move on to agenda item 5, which is financial update. I would be very surprised if we had any major changes this so early in the budget, but Jackie, let's hear from you.
Yeah, the pig's usually my cue to come on, so...
Is that because they can fly?
I don't know. I don't know. Perhaps we'll get a new picture next time. Yeah, like Mel says, there's not an awful lot to report, really, as the figures that I've given are for April only, well, where we were at sort of the end of April. And, I mean, I'll go over just briefly what I said last week's meeting with regards to the general reserves, really, and the earmarked reserves. So, overall, the savings we made, the net figure of the savings in the overspends for last year came out around 27,000. So if you add that to the 255 we had, if you remember, we agreed to transfer 46,000 into the general reserves from unused earmarked reserves. There was a few little pots that we weren't using, so we were going to bump them up by that. Then we spent setting up crowdfunder, which we hadn't budgeted for. We agreed to underwrite the town hall income for the first 3 months of this year because we weren't here, but we'd budgeted income. So that ended up with the reserves being around 295, which is shown on the balance sheet all the time. But again, if you remember, we've agreed to top this year's budget up by 76,000, so the actual figure remains at about 210, 211. But it's still obviously a little bit above the minimum 180. So not an awful lot, but there's a little cushion there. So I think last week we looked at the earmarked reserves, and I don't think there's anything surprising there. They've all been agreed. They're all projects that have been agreed, and I'm not really sure what else you'd like me to say, really. Or if you've got any questions, by all means ask. We've started to get some income in from the town hall with the tenants for the first month. The agreement is they pay everything in advance, a month in advance, so we've got all the standing orders set up for that. Rachel will go on to tell you about, we've had some bookings, etc., so I won't steal her thunder. And apart from that, the only little bit of good news is that I suggested to Fair Frome to appeal to Mendip about the business rates, as they've got the whole building as a charity, and they were successful. So they don't pay any business rates, as I understand it now. That was something we would have had to have picked up, so that was good. So we've saved about 2,000. So that hopefully should be ongoing for year on year. Also, I have arranged for the valuer to come and look at the building now to try and reduce our rates that we pay on this building, because that building is separate to this one. So once we've got a little bit of time, they'll come in. It's been lodged, so it'll be backdated, so there's no problem we'll lose it. But because we've got a certain amount of charities taking up a certain percentage of the building, we should be able to get our rates reduced.
Great.
So if you get any questions, by all means.
Anything? I mean, the conclusions that I can draw from this are two really. One, that the flexibility is not there as we've had in previous years. So we're getting closer to the minimum that we require that we set ourselves actually for general reserves. And the second is that the kind of earmarked reserves which are there, which look incredibly healthy at the moment, if things go to plan this year, then we'll spend most of them, and actually quite a lot of that will be reduced over the next 12 months on some of the capital schemes that we've got coming forward. I guess that's correct, is it?
That is correct. We will also, we will not benefit from the buffer of the council support tax grant this year, which is 100,000 that we've been able to utilise other places. So there'll be none, that's stopped. So
I think it's a message for councillors that we need to take away to elsewhere, that introducing new and expensive schemes throughout the year might be more difficult. I'm not saying things won't change, and certainly small amounts will be moved around, but you know, introducing something that's going to cost us quite a lot of money might be difficult in year. Okay.
yes.
Thank you. Anything else?
I just check, just for clarity's sake, that the earmark reserve of C&G Tower renovation, we're just holding that money.
We're just holding that money, yes.
Yeah.
So what happens is,
It's not money we've put in.
no, it's a Public Works Loan Board loan that we took out, and periodically they produce invoices that Peter Wheelhouse signs off, and then we release 10,000 as it goes. If Peter's satisfied with that, we'll release it. But we are just holding that money for them. It's not ours, no.
That's fine, and they're paying it back as...
They're paying. No, we're paying a loan.
Yeah.
We took out a loan, so we're doing the repayments. Do you want me to just say?
Yeah, go on
Yeah.
then, yeah.
Okay. So this year, the investment that we made in the PV panels for the Cheese and Grain building,
That's right, yeah.
that will be paid off so any income generated from the PV panels, which roughly is about 6, 8 a year, that covers the loan that we've taken out for the tower.
Yeah.
So you knew there was an answer in there somewhere, didn't you? Right. Thank you. That's right, Jack.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. I think, despite the whispering, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is perhaps in future we could call it staff development rather than staff training. Training always reminds me of circuses, and it's really important that we help to develop our staff in all sorts of ways. And we've got a great set of people now. So actually improving their skills and retaining them, and you can't return staff forever because they move on, is absolutely essential for us. And the concept in here, which is unusual, of actually breaking down the budget and giving it to the individuals subject to certain parameters, is novel, and I think quite forward-looking actually. So I've just stolen your thunder, Peter. So is there anything else you want to say?
Not really. I think the idea of individual allocations for members of staff, we feel will help build their ownership of the training plans that they agree with their line managers. So I think it will be very broadly supported by the staff.
Any comments? Nothing? Oh, sorry, Chris.
Sorry, just on behalf of the Rangers who aren't here, they've just all had their appraisal with me, and to a person, we're incredibly grateful and complimentary of the training that the council offers, actually, which I haven't experienced at another organisation. So it was a thank you for making the budget available.
Does that mean we can reduce it next year?
They've learned to do it all now.
Just find the level where they can see it.
Thank you, Chris. There are 2 recommendations, as you can see on the screen. Any proposal for that?
Yes.
Any seconder? All those in favour? You?
It is unanimous.
Well, we assume Gary voted. Agenda item 7, which is a presentation on work completed by the environment team. I asked Chris to start to put this on because sometimes we forget what it is that some of our outside workers do. So this is just a way of keeping it on the forefront of our mind every month.
Funnily enough, I'd forgotten just what we'd done since the last meeting as well, actually. So it probably won't cover everything. An awful lot of stuff, hopefully, is conveyed in the updates that come out through Paul as we go. But just a couple of key points that I did want to pick up on. Not that you'd know it today, given that it's chucking down with rain, but we're well into grass cutting season now, which is why you've got a lovely picture of Ranger Mike, who's been out cutting some grass. That definitely was not today.
Is that our mower? Do we own that?
Oh, yes.
Can't borrow it.
Do you want to go?
I suspect with training and permissions, we might be able to arrange for...
Won't get your back gate cop.
In fact, there are other councils that allow members of the public and train them up to do their grass cutting for them. So there you go. It's not too far-fetched. Some of the other things that have happened in the last few months. We've got some new benches in the play area at Welch Mill. We've got 5 in total. And next set of benches are going in over at the show field in the next fortnight or so. Some of the work that Red and Dave in particular have been doing has been some running repairs, actually. That's down on the other side. Half term is usually a little bit fraught, and most of the spindles are broken most of the time. So we've been doing some work repairing. That includes graffiti work as well. And we're on to our 3rd or 4th set of bins down at the Roundhouse now. The rest have all either been burnt out or ended up in the river. So it might be a case that we're on our last set of bins down there and have to think of a different approach. Chateau Gontier Walk as a whole definitely needs some work, and that's something that we are looking at. However, the riverbank itself is something that the rangers have been cultivating over the last couple of years, seeding with wildflowers and trying to move away from traditional grass riverbank. And the results this summer are looking really, really good. Again, in the town centre, the rangers have been out starting with the good weather, a lick of paint for various bits of street furniture. These are the sorts of things that, although strictly don't belong to the town council, both the county council and the district council are increasingly happy that they're functional rather than perhaps pretty and looking their best. So we're just taking up that slack. In conjunction with Frome Lions, we have just finished a play and picnic project in Victoria Park in the old pitch and putt area. This is due to be formally opened this weekend at the Lions Fete. However, the good weather last week meant that the contractors finished this already. It's open for use and proving quite popular. I was up there this morning signing it off, and there were about 10 families in there already, which is great. Not the best photo we've ever taken. Zion Path is impossible to make look attractive. It's a wee bit shady, it's incredibly long, and it's just a path. But something that the rangers have done is a slightly raised retaining edge to it, which will stop leaves immediately covering the footpath when leaf fall happens in winter. We've also been planting up alongside Zion Path as well. And generally everywhere, something that we do is try to help to keep the town clean. We're straying a little into town matters territory, but we are trying to work constructively with the district council on their cleaning contract, and generally the rangers have an attitude of they will pick up as they go along and keep things looking clean and tidy. And that was a lovely bit of artwork that I found this morning on one of our bins, which I think conveys the message perfectly, actually. Any questions about what we're doing, what we're up to?
Was that Rachel's work?
She may take credit for it.
I think sometimes we underestimate how much that you do, and we are preparing, unless things improve, to bring to a future meeting how much Chris does in terms of chasing the district council along with Des and sometimes myself, just to get some of the bins that are not owned by us emptied and the streets clean. It's disproportionate for more than it should be in terms of our role, but we'll try and quantify that and bring that back to you sometime in the future.
The churchyard. So that's all looked after by the district council. It's one that has been reported in the last fortnight or so. But not this week. Not yet. No, and so that's where the balance is. So obviously tonight's meeting mainly focused on what we do on our estate that we've got direct control over. But as I said, the team of rangers that we've got doesn't tend to just stop at a boundary because it's there. If they see something, they will endeavour to do their best to keep it clean and tidy. But
if you interrogate your council tax bill thoroughly, which only nerds like me do, you'll actually see there's an amount in there that's applied separately by the district council for looking after churchyards and cemeteries, and that's why we don't maintain them. I'm sure if that money came across to us, we'd be more than happy to do it.
You might also see that actually in the last couple of years that amount has actually gone up, despite the fact that the amount of land owned by the district council in this town has gone down as we've taken more of it on.
So you look at it as well?
I do.
I mean, on that sort of subject, one thing I've often wondered is obviously we're kind of generally keen to kind of take on bits of land that are being neglected and sort of bring them under our, expert management. But is there ever any kind of recognition of the additional costs that brings to us as a council? Any kind of transfer of budgets that are allocated to that land, or do we just take it on? And
yes, when we negotiate and start talking about pieces of land potentially coming across to us, myself and Jackie will, it's special expenses, isn't it, I think? We'll ask that is reflected in typically the money that Mendip takes at the other end. We don't tend to expect a dowry or a donation towards looking after these things anymore. And one thing actually is we've sort of previously said, the land that is potentially due to come across to us will probably stretch us to our capacity as things stand. If more opportunities came the way of the town council, it might be a case that we'd have to add extra resource to look after those. However, the benefit of looking after more parks and green spaces is you can do it strategically, and we can do it to the standards that we currently are, and I think that the town appreciates. So.
Just a couple of things. One thing that I noticed, I've taken to doing an hour's sort of circular walk, so sorry Chris, because you're going to get loads more pictures and busybodying. But one of the things that I noticed going on one of my walks was, I presume it was the Horticultural Society putting the flowers into pots outside the library.
It was, yes.
So, brilliant. So it was really nice to see, and there was a big group of people involved in doing that. So that was
good.
And that's in partnership with.
So yeah, that's at the same time that we looked at North Parade. What we said was actually there are certain parts of the town that do merit that kind of seasonal planting and the seasonal florals. They're obviously labour intensive to look after, but the partnership that we've arranged is that kind of the design and the planting goes across to a local organisation that's really interested and cares about it.
Yeah, I think it's great. One of the other things I was going to, something I've noticed is the turnaround time of spindles being kicked out of something, and if you walk there a couple of days later, it's replaced. That's really impressive. You know, having things that have been battered about and left for weeks is quite sort of, it's miserable, isn't it, to see. But the other thing that isn't reflected on this list in terms of the Rangers activities, and when you see them out and about, and I know we've commented on this before, but they are constantly, I don't know how they get this much work done, because they are constantly talking to residents and people who want to a little bit...
Tell them off for that.
No. But I think it's really valuable, and they are providing really excellent information, and they're always, cheerful and polite, and kind of eavesdropped a couple of times, and it's really valuable for us as a council, I think, and it's a really important point of contact with people.
Thank you, and I'll make sure that gets passed on. Yes, they certainly take pride in the community side of the role, and I think it's from that we've got projects like the Critchell Rangers one and the College Rangers that have come to fruition. Otherwise, we'd be looking at more traditional management of all of our sites.
Could I mention the roundabout, the small roundabout, before you get to Sainsbury's? That has a sign on it saying APD, which I found out is an auto spares firm or something like that. And I rang them up because the roundabout is disgraceful. It's awful. There's nothing to do with us, but it is awful. And so I contacted Sainsbury's. I said, are you not ashamed of this roundabout in front of you? Would it not be a nice idea to spruce it up a bit? And the manager has got back in touch, and he's got some money to do that. But all he's got money to do is to root everything out, cover it with membrane, and put some pebbles all over it. Which, okay, it's better than it is at the moment, which is neither additional flowers, neither plants nor weeds. It's just a mess. So I don't know what you think about this really, whether we stroke, I certainly expect Rangers to do it, but whether members of the public Sainsbury's won't do it themselves, they'll just do this rather boring idea that they have, but it's better than nothing. It's better than it is at the moment. Anyway, I'll leave you with that. I don't think we need to discuss it.
Okay.
Right, I think it's something we can look into. The right planting scheme would require very little maintenance, so perhaps that's the way forward for that particular.
Yeah, so I was just thinking if we allow them to put the gravel and then break through in places, we could put a tree in there or something like that. As long as it doesn't say Sainsbury's.
I seem to recall a discussion quite a while back about the advertising on that roundabout, which nobody seemed to know who had approved or allowed or owned, and there was a suggestion that maybe it was just kind of ad hoc, people decided to go and put their signs on there. So it'd be interesting to know at some point, you know, who actually owns that roundabout, and is that advertising actually
think it's also
official
being
in any way? The county.
Yeah, I know it's also been taken up by the new county councillors as well, so
Right,
hopefully they may have a few more answers and possibly some budget to come with it. Be nice, wouldn't it?
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. Okay, we move on to agenda item 8. I'm really pleased to see this report. It's in a kind of lively and unusual style, but local government is really very poor at communicating with people and getting their message across, being able to say clearly what it is that we're trying to achieve. And now that somebody like Rachel is in place, it's incumbent upon us, I think, to make sure that we really take this seriously and that we invest properly in marketing and communications into the future. So, over to you, Rach.
Right, well, to start off really, I've given you the marketing strategy, which you all agreed last April 2016. Only really as a reminder, because you would have seen it since probably. And really, I'm just looking at a few things today, because we've been without Rebecca. So, to be honest, the communications that have been coming out since I've been in post have been firefighting those places. So in terms of the marketing strategy, we haven't particularly moved it on. So I thought it would be quite useful at this point to have a look to just see where we are on base levels. So this is our website. Let's start there. It's the best place for communicating exactly what it is that we want to show people, is the very best place. So this is the Frome Community website statistics over the course of the year. So we have had 75,000 sessions, 50,000 users. Most people have been on there for 1.42 minutes, whatever that means, and the bounce rate, 10%. That's not so bad.
The bounce rate, because that's people that just leave straight away.
Yeah. Yeah, they just go. So actually 1.42 doesn't sound very long, and actually that may be somebody just does a search and discovers they can't find what they're looking for, and then they go, because that is about 1.52. We're sort of looking for 2.5 minutes, if we possibly can, to mean that they're there and they're getting the information that they actually want. But for a bounce rate, that's not bad. That means they've landed on the page and they have got to where they, were expected to go. They found a search box, they've put something in. Generally speaking, some of those statistics are also driven from links that have come from the website or that have come from press releases. So they're not, they're not all for the homepage. But that's where we are. You can see the new visitors and the returning visitors. There's an awful lot of returning visitors. But we would like, obviously, more returning visitors, because that will mean they know what the information that they're looking for is going to be there. So that really is the community website in a nutshell. The only other thing to note is that we get about 6,250 hits a month, which is about 250 hits up on this time last year. So we're moving in the right direction, albeit quite slowly. Discover Frome. So obviously we have Discover Frome alongside. I've not got very much to say about Discover Frome because I haven't been able to really do proper analysis, and we are having a look properly at that at a later date, and so that's a little spoiler for Town Matters next week, isn't it? But here we are, similar figures, a little bit down to from the community website. 70,000 sessions, 55,000 users, 1.4 minutes, so that's about the same. The bounce rate is lots higher, but we know what that means. That means when people get to Discover Frome, they don't see what they're looking for, and so they go straight away. As you'd expect, you've got lots more new visitors than returning visitors, but we have got some returning visitors. So, there we go. Sorry? Well, do you know, I really searched for the spikes, and there's another interesting spike there on the Frome community website, but I just could not find them.
Have people played it cheesy way?
No, just...
Well, I guess they're sort of around the kind of extravaganza sort of time, maybe, kind of Christmassy events.
So, yeah, these ones could be the extravaganza, but there's nothing on the website to correlate. That's the thing. There's nothing that was, yeah. So, sadly, not. You know, I was looking for the market. I was looking for, you know, town events, but we couldn't find them. So sometimes that does just happen, and they're not. It's not such a massive anomaly. It's the difference between 1,000 people looking and, you know, 500. Actually, if you are trying to look at that nationally, that's not very many people at all. It just makes a nice spike on the graph, so it's something to talk about and look at. Okay, so this is also the other interesting thing. This is sort of, you know, it's really top level. It's not, there's no depth to this at all. But looking at the community visitors and the Discover Frome visitors, you can see that the top graph is the community website. As you'd expect, Frome is at the top with 17% of sessions, but London is number 2 at 15% of sessions. So that is the Discover Frome is as we expect it to be, you know, outside, but then Frome comes in at 10%. So that is quite interesting. You know, are people looking on Discover Frome for events? If you Google Frome, Discover Frome is the thing that comes up first. What is interesting also is that although there is a link between the websites, there is really hardly any traffic between them at all. It's as if they don't, it's as if people just don't see that and don't click on it. So what does all this mean, really? It means that there is a disparity between where people are going, and we need to point people better at where they're going. However, it does mean that both sites' figures, they're slightly up on last year, so we're doing okay. We know we could do better and Discover Frome much, much better. Social media figures, just to gloss over all that, actually, are also on the up. We get about a person a day signing up to Twitter or to Facebook. What is up are the referrals. So that's the people who click on social media links that go back to the website. So I think that was 6% or something last year. The improvements that have been made there seem to be quite well reflected. Yeah, the bounce rates, we already talked about that. So basically there's more work to be done around usability, functionality of search facilities on the Frome community website, and lots of work around Discover Frome, full stop. What else have we been doing? So the other main focus, whilst I've been here for the last 2 months, I think I've been here, really has been to look at how we communicate with residents. It's really, I think, how the town feels about the work that the council do really impacts on how they feel about their environment, what's going on. You know, lovely pictures of Chris, always of Chris's Chris's Rangers work, always, you know, they just get such a positive response. And the more that we can get that out in public, the better, really. So press releases, we had lots of press releases. We're going for, you know, we went for a bumper. So Food Times this week, we've got 5 press releases in there. I'm really happy with that. Just trying to make sure that there's lots of images everywhere that are our quick snap images that have been, you know, that not too thought about, can be put on social media, sent to the papers, on the website, bish bash bosh. Not too much money attached to it, and really quite easy to do. So the other real focus has had to have been supporting the work that the council have done, doing Chris's lovely plans and getting stuff out for community projects officers, the posters, and so that has been a focus. That will change and be subsumed into the normal running, but that has been something that is taken up time and hopefully is quite evident. The other thing that we've tried to do is updates. So we have a new look for the Town Clerk's update, and hopefully that's going out in a timely fashion and is got stuff in that people want to read. We've tried to perk it up, and we are hoping to put that out and broaden the audience for that. So that now goes on our website and out via social media, and there's a sign-up page on the website so that people can sign up, and that is slowly picking up. Alongside that, we're looking to broaden the parks and open spaces list. We've got the new business update that we've sent out to, I think, 800 businesses last month, and I think it's increased, is about to increase next month, so that's going out at the end of next week, the second issue. And then we've got a new look for the community update. So where we have spent money is on the town hall. Images 4, 360 tour of the town hall. Now, I did debate whether I was going to sit here and try and show you, but please just go and Google Frome Town Hall and go on the virtual tour yourself, and don't make me stand here like a buffoon doing it. So, but that's really good. And alongside that, we've got lots of lovely images. And of course, hopefully tonight, live streaming of meetings. So we still haven't trailed it because we have had 1 or 2 problems. But tonight we are live streaming. And so tomorrow that will be in the world on our YouTube channel. Yeah? All of it? There we are. So that was, any questions about any of that?
Only on the website, really.
Yeah.
If we've got 2 both need work, would it not make sense just to work on one decent one?
Well, Frome Community website, the work that needs is sort of quite a lot of stuff is remedial. It's a massive beast. It's 150 pages, and quite a lot of that needs slashed and archived. We need to make sure that the information that's there is relevant information that people actually want to see, and that's not laying information on top of information on top of information. Also, we need to make sure that people get to where they need to go. There's real problems with the navigation. Quite a lot of that, I think, will be sorted out by robust tagging. But that, you know, so that is the work that needs to be done on that. I'd also really like to see it a little bit more visual on the homepage. But in terms of the content, really, it's there. All the content's there. We've got good stuff going on there. The news blogs are working really well and are really well received. So that is a thing that is not, it's not broken, it just needs refinement. Discover Frome just needs an entirely, you know, it needs a rethink. It needs a, you know, proper sit down and to work out, and that's what's not been done yet. So I don't really want to comment on whether I would recommend that, because I haven't done that work. Yeah. Is the truth of it. You know, top line, you look at Discover Frome and you know that it needs work.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're quite different websites that serve different needs in a way. The Frome Community Information website is primarily a sort of residents and council information centre hub.
Yeah. Don't use that word.
Sorry. Whereas Discover Frome is very much an outward focused, tourist information, event information, that kind of thing. And I think it's kind of right that kind of stuff isn't necessarily meshed into a sort of what feels like a council website. It probably needs a new, better identity of its own that is much more about events and tourism and outward, bringing people in kind of focus.
Yes, I mean, I think before I had started, if I were this role, and if I was sort of approaching it from a preconceived, from a different position, looking at the outside, yes, it seems crazy to have two websites, but actually that is what we have, and Discover Frome is very successful at getting people at it. That is, so I would be loath to slash that at the moment, because it's doing well. What we need to make sure is when people get there, that there are things that people want to see, and that we have a proper Frome offer. Sometimes it just hasn't been looked after very well in terms of what content is going on which site, and there's that's no criticism to anybody else. It's just how it has been. It has been quite ad hoc. So what we need is just a proper plan and a vision for what we're trying to do on each one. But like I said, we have a new intern coming, so that will really help enable, and quite soon now, 3rd of July, and quite a lot of the bulk of that work will be done by them.
Can I just add that we've got a report coming to Town Matters next time, so next week, which will present a package of measures which will hopefully improve the availability of not just for visitors, but also for residents too, particularly around events.
Yes, and it should show, and that will, the work that we do around that would then enable Discover Frome to sort of be more reflective of what Frome is actually like and about. And then the Frome Town community website is more community based, and that that is would be a better management of that.
And Discover Frome, is that managed by us in terms of who enters all the information and collects the event information, etc.?
Yes. So from the adoption of the management of the marketing strategy, I think one of the first things that was done was that was all brought in house. So that Discover Frome was brought in house. So and actually to keep picking up figures, I mean, it has done a lot better than it was doing. So there has been, the increase over the year has absolutely nothing to do with me. It's, the work of backup beforehand, really, to just try and steer that. So, that's where we're starting from, is really what I'm saying. And hopefully we're going to be able to.
I don't think we should beat ourselves up too much, because I've been doing a bit of research, as you know, for the conference that we're supposed to run later this year. And most of the sites of equivalent sized town councils are awful. And they mix up the councillors with events, with what's happening in the town, and are visually incredibly poor. I mean, if you want to really spoil your day, just go and have a look at any one of those sites. And the numbers are great. I mean, the numbers are good, really, for a town council as such. That doesn't mean to say that we can't improve them and certainly make it much more effective, and I think that's the road that we're on. So I think we should kind of bear that in mind in terms of where we're up to.
And I would also like to increase the links between the two sites, because although they are separate sites, I would like to look at them as an entire thing.
I mean, is it possible to when you press either of those sites, for them both to come up and for you to decide, that's the first decision you make, whether you want to go to the community site or the Discover?
Yes. that is easily possible with a, so it's like a fascia that you put on the top. Yeah. We would just need to do some work around whether that was desirable or whether that would put people off, because obviously the more clicks people have to do, and we would have to make it very clear what was on each one, which then leads to information, and then so we would want to not perhaps make a snap decision about that, but really look properly, research that properly.
Well done. Okay, let's move on. I think it's still you.
It is still me, yes. So there is, So what's been going on at the town hall? So I'm just going straight into this, tenancy agreements, as we, this has moved on since we wrote the report. Why have now signed their tenancy agreement, I understand. Frome still actually haven't signed it, but agreed months ago that it was absolutely fine. Is that correct? That's right, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just, I think, Bob Asher went on holiday, and I think it's just some things to pick up.
Yeah. So they're all signed and they're in, and that is good. What we really want to look at is data on booking. So currently we are averaging about 2 to 3 meetings every weekday, and then that goes down to an average of 1 to 2 on the weekends. Brace yourselves, because the meeting room occupancy rate is not marvellous, it's 10%. But really that's sort of from a standing start from April, because there wasn't very much work done beforehand to get people in. Just the sheer effort of moving the council to the town hall meant that that's something that's, not been started. So I think we look at these as a standing start. The total occupancy target, not the target, the total occupancy is 30% if you include the Y and Frome and, the tenants. So those are the figures, and, that is where we are at the moment. It is not a shining example, however, we have got lots of leads and lots of things going on to help improve that and work towards that. We've had, I wasn't expecting that to be that one. Oh, we seem to have lost a slide. Never mind. Okay, so there are two things that Paul particularly wanted me to talk about, 2 rooms. The parlour, which was decided at the last TAG discussion. The parlour, where is that? Where is the parlour? It's the little room that used to be called the war room.
Oh, the one out the back?
Yes.
Oh, right.
So we've changed its name to something a little more friendly, a little more accessible.
Does it feel like a parlour, or does it still... Need some soft furnishings in there?
Well... I think it's because it's what it was down on the map.
Oh, the original.
I think that, yes.
Okay.
Yes, I think that was Sean's brainchild. Do we think that's right? Yeah. Yeah, so that's what it was. That's on the plan, and that's much nicer than the war room. And subsequently, we're inviting community groups to have free space there, so probably much more amenable. We were getting lots and lots of requests by all sorts of community groups for meeting rooms that they didn't want to pay for. So this is a way to meet that need. Everybody, any community group can approach us to have a meeting room, a meeting in there for a maximum of 2 hours. They have to be here between 10 and 4. It has to be easy for us, but anybody who wants to do that can do that, as long as they're a community group or organisation. If they want a larger space, then it was decided that they can then apply to the Mayor's Fund to fund a larger space. And that helps the occupancy rates, really, is what that helps. It means the money comes from a different source, and that all ties in quite quite neatly and nicely. Seems to be working quite well and doesn't seem to be impacting our figures at all. We were a little bit worried that the meeting room 1 and 2 use would go down, but that hasn't happened. So that seems to be working quite well. The other thing the other space that I've been asked to talk about is the cafe space. Because it does have limited facilities, it has now been decided that it can't be used as a commercial enterprise for a number of reasons. So instead we're looking at to use it for in-house events. We might brand a group of supper clubs just to get people used to using the space. We're looking to use it as a bar for events and just using it in a slightly different way to the way that it was originally sort of thought that it might be used. So that, just as a hospitality space, useful for exhibition openings as well. Oh yes, and a note on the exhibition. Sadly, I thought there would be a nice new exhibition in the hallway this week. We do have Critchhill coming in, but they've been slightly delayed. So they've got some amazing artwork that they're going to bring in. Was due to be this week, it's now going to be next week, as I understand it. Yes, licensing. Premises licensing. So this is all taking longer than anticipated, but it's all in process and in hand. The premises license, following a visit by the police and the fire brigade, all the fire issues have now been signed off. The police, in their report, said that we needed CCTV. And then they said we specifically needed a report from their CCTV person, who then subsequently went on holiday. So we are unfortunately still waiting for that. But when we get that back, then we will commission and fit the cameras, and that should all be then relatively smooth sailing. The wedding licence, we've just heard that we do actually need change of use, planning consent, so that Jane and I are working together to put that together. Again, we'll update you as and when we know more. Facilities. So this really is out of my remit and Chris's list, but snagging is completed, as I understand it. Hammonds are done and been signed off. CCTV and panic alarms have been costed. As before, we're awaiting police approval on the CCTV plans. Sash windows and door to be investigated. So this is a case where we need somebody specialist to come in to look at the sash windows to see if we can make the top open rather than the bottom, which would be less alarming for events, although not a problem for anybody at the moment. It is felt that that would be something that we want to press ahead with. And there's some problem with the door mechanism downstairs, so that's being investigated. We've got a second wave of signs yet to be commissioned. They are things that it has become apparent that we need around the building. The car parking signs being the most pressing, really, to ensure that the reserve bays stay reserved. And then I get to say the lovely word quinquennial plan complete. So that is, Jeff Hunt has done a plan. Quinquennial means 5-year plan, and it is basically to look at maintenance of the building and to plan that out. That will be incorporated into the maintenance plan as from next year, as I understand it. There we go. Any questions about any of that?
The additional signage,
Yes.
I'd just like to carry on being involved in that if I can, as and when it comes forward. As to, I don't know if there's anything significant, but
Yeah, okay. Of course.
Well, a question on the licensing.
Yes.
Have they asked you where the bar is going to be?
No.
So how can they decide whether you can have a premises license or not?
Well, because the licenses for the premises, and we can transport it, as I understand it. It's a license to have a bar here.
How do you know where the CCTV has to go?
Well, I think they are
I mean,
saying at the moment that all the public areas that we
Yeah.
would anticipate need to be covered.
And also
shouldn't
generally the CCTV is usually only in the circulation areas and primary entrances and exits. You wouldn't necessarily expect CCTV in, like, for example, you wouldn't have CCTV in this room.
We would if it was a licensed premise. We ended up with like 24 cameras when they came to the football.
they? Yeah, and that
Every thing of the place had to be covered. That's what I was asking. If
well,
you
that's why we're waiting on the police report for their specific report will show us where the cameras need to be, because the CCTV people were already here when we discovered that we might need it. So that's why we have that sort of slight overlapping. We're not quite sure what we need, but we have had a quote of possible, it's a funny...
Yeah, I mean, there was provision in the building work. We had an existing CCTV system in the building which had external cameras which we retained, and I think 1 or 2 internal ones, and a very, very old kind of main unit that ran it all. For the refurb, we basically maintained and reinstalled cabling, so there's positions for CCTV cameras at reception and covering the main circulation areas, which is what you'd need for a typical kind of security system. The old hardware wasn't recommissioned because it was basically felt it wasn't probably that worthwhile doing so. And then that kind of decision was somewhat deferred to sort of see whether we would decide to put in a brand new system, but with the containment and the infrastructure we'd already put in, or try and sort of cobble back together the one we had. So it'd be interesting to find out what the requirements of the police would be. I mean, it seems to me if we're able to get event licenses relatively easily, we'll need to sort of make that judgment as is it actually worth getting a permanent license.
Well, you're only allowed, you mean temporary event notices?
Yeah.
We're only allowed 12 of those a year.
Right.
So I'm really hoping we're going to have more functions than that.
Right.
Yeah, you can have more.
And if not, then the
Sean
sums.
could do more on his licence, and I'm happy to apply on my licence, but you can only have...
Yeah, okay.
We can only have
50 on... You can have 50 as a licensee.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Right. Oh, there we are.
But
Maybe
then
that's
that's using mine up, you see.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it will just be interesting to sort of understand what the cost implications of works needed to get a permanent licence would be.
Yes. Although really we want to get the venue. I'm assuming, obviously you tell me, but I really want to get it on the most professional footing that we can, and I don't like the idea of, temporary event notice is absolutely fine for now.
They're a pain though, because you'll be 5 minutes late with it and then they charge you, or
they charge you more, or somebody forgets to do it because they're all...
And I guess if you're trying to let the space commercially and then you fail to manage to get the licence,
yes, then that is embarrassing and bad, really terrible reputationally. Yeah.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Okay.
Let's not get too hung up on in terms of where in the town hall, so where the cafe is, where the other cafe is. If we need to use it for some other purpose and we need to get other tenancy, then let's start thinking about meetings after reviews.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth saying during the design phase of the building, the cafe was intended as a sort of informal daytime drop-in kind of space. The idea of having a commercial operator run it came up very late, and I personally, that wasn't the kind of core need that we were trying to meet there.
No.
So I think as long as it's, it may be that there's some facilities that can go in there that enable staff and visitors to make themselves a drink and use that as a kind of informal meeting space, stroke social space for the building, and that was the main intention behind it.
And in fact, I can imagine that the meeting rooms are going to be so full that we're going to have an overspill into there.
Yeah.
We do have lots of interest. The figures were quite dismal, but we have booked our first wedding this time.
Oh, wow.
Yay! Don't get too excited. Don't buy the hat yet. It's 2018 October. Plenty of time for something to go terribly wrong. Not with us, but with them. We've also got Frome Learning Partnership. They came to a meeting here with Kate. Not as exciting, but more more bums on seats
Yeah,
over the trajectory-wise, just much better for the figures. So they've booked to come back to do a meeting here. They currently take their meetings out of Frome. I would much rather keep them in-house. So we're looking to impress and make that smooth. There are also other people who are interested, like Somerset Skills and Learning. So we have got lots of interest, which obviously the figures don't quite reflect at this point. So we're positive.
Okay, Deborah, I prepared this health and safety level update, update. So next meeting is Wednesday, the 6th of September. Thank you.
Thank you.